A big, warm welcome, welcome, welcome back. So glad that you are here with us. Welcome back to the main stage of Upswell 2021. I'm G, based here in coming to you from Chicago. I hope that you've been inspired by what you've heard already today, this morning. I don't really know how you couldn't be. My heart is full, my mind is full, and I am feeling truly inspired and also fired up. So this has just been an excellent start to this event this morning. And now, of course, we come to the final main stage of day one of Upswell. Now, I think you're going to leave the last main stage session of the day with lots to consider about the paradox of the American story. Now, the promise has always been that we're in the land of the free. And if not, we should fight against the system that supports injustice, right? Isn't that what we all believe and fight for? But is there a third way to think about this? One that celebrates our country's principles by asking each of us to play a role in helping our country live up to its ideals. And that's what this session will explore. I mean, how do we get to real solutions to racial injustice in an environment that is so toxic and polarized? Sometimes you feel defeated before you even get started, right? So right now, I'd like to introduce Reverend Branden Polk. He is with the Charles Koch Institute and Stand Together. Now, this is a philanthropic community that identifies, vets, and creates organizations that discover innovative ways to remove barriers in education, business, communities, and government so every person can rise. Reverend Polk will moderate this extraordinary conversation with two visionary leaders of the Heal America movement, which aims to combat racial injustice with love and redemption. Do you hear these continuing themes throughout the day? I love it. Okay, Reverend Polk, welcome and thank you to Heal America, powered by the Stand Together Foundation, for sponsoring this session. Hi, Rev. You said I could call you Rev B.
You can call me Rev B. Call me anything you like.
I love it. And you know, it's so meaningful that you are with us today because you have been extraordinarily busy. Of course, in your professional life, in your work as a reverend, but also in your personal life. I heard you just made a big move.
I did. I just made a big move after being in Washington, D.C. for 12 long, wonderful, hard years. I've been in Washington, D.C. for 12 years, and I just moved to Brooklyn, New York. So anyone out there in the Upswell audience and the independent sector audience, uh, hook me up with all the best places to eat, the best places to go hang out, the best parks, all of that. But yeah, I made it to Brooklyn safe and sound.
Well, when you say new, you mean really new, because how many days have you been in Brooklyn?
About 20. Yeah, I'm a little disassociated from those 20 days because I've been traveling and also moving all at the same time. But it's been a joy. I'm so glad to be there now. But it's a little I'm a little crazed. I don't know what day it is. I don't know what time it is. But it's been about 20 days.
Well, you certainly don't show that at all. And I know that this morning you've been watching the main stage, this in particular as well. And what was sort of the takeaways for you from this morning's incredible conversation between Dr. Christopher and Professor Powell?
Yeah, well, gee, thank you so much for asking that. I am so pleased and want to offer my congratulations to Professor Powell and to Dr. Christopher, wonderful friends who have just been doing amazing things in the work on bridging and belonging for so many years. They are mentors, they are change makers, and this whole dialogue about bridging and belonging and humanity, getting more closely connected to our real humanity, is exactly what we need to help us heal and bridge divides in our communities today. We need it more than ever.
Well, I think you are exactly what we need right now, Reverend Branden Polk, and this upcoming intriguing conversation you're about to have. So I'm going to let you take it away.
Thank you so much, G. And thank you to the Upswell community and to independent sector for allowing us this opportunity to participate in Upswell 2021. I'd like to start just by giving you a personal story of sorts here about our community at the Stand Together Foundation and the work that we've been doing to heal America, and in particular, the racial divide in America. There was a man, his name is Bishop Omar Jawar, who really touched us. He was a change maker, he's a pastor in Dallas. He bridged divides between Bloods and Crips and brought people together across lines of difference in ways that were miraculous and amazing. And it was because of his example that we've been inspired to really lean in to the racial divide in America, the toxic polarization, and hopefully to really inspire people across lines of difference to work together to generate solutions to our most intractable problems, and especially those that are manifestations of racial injustice. So in order to start our panel today, I'd first like to toss to this video, take a look at this video that tells us about the Heal America movement.
I feel like I'm standing in the middle of a fire. The question is, how are we going to respond to this fire? We have to start with aspiration and inspiration in order for us to believe that we can heal. This is Heal America. I'm Bishop Omar Jawar. Heal America is a series of local conversations bringing together leaders who are committed to finding common ground and believe we can find and implement solutions that chart a constructive path forward for our nation.
I was shot 5 times by a police officer, and there's not been any accountability.
On behalf of police officers, man, I'm sorry, man. So it's my vow to everybody on this panel that I will do my best to be that change from within.
We have this saying in America that all people are created equal. Equal justice, inclusion, and empowerment. These ideals set the standard for what we should be as a nation. We believe, as Frederick Douglass and Dr. King did, that America draws its strength from these ideas, and that more fully embracing them is the solution to overcoming any injustice. It will take each of us bringing our abilities, our knowledge, and skills to the table to move this forward.
I mentioned that this is a personal story. Bishop Omar Jawar, 47 years old, lost his life due to complications with COVID-19. And his memory, it is in his memory that we continue the Heal America movement on today. And we're going to continue to have a conversation about him, about this movement, and starting with bringing in 2 dear friends of mine who have been the co-chairs of this movement from the beginning. Anton Lucky and the Reverend Dr Deforesauris. Let me tell you about Antong Lucky, who is the founder and leader. He was the founder and leader of the Dallas 415 Bloods gang, and he worked closely with Bishop Omar in the organization that they founded called the Urban Specialists, which focuses on curbing urban violence. As a master educator and national engagement director for OGU, Original Gangsters University, that's right. Antong is a sought-out speaker on a number of issues, but I'm hoping that he will actually tell you about his forthcoming book towards the end of our panel today. And then there's the Reverend Dr Deforesauris, who became a prominent leader in the civil rights movement in the decade following Dr. King's assassination. Dr. Soaries has worked tirelessly as a public advocate, a businessman, a faith leader. He has served as the senior pastor of First Baptist Church of Lincoln Gardens in New Jersey, recently retired, actually. He was New Jersey's first African-American male Secretary of State and founded a number of businesses and nonprofit organizations focusing on spiritual growth, educational excellence, and economic empowerment. I'd like to welcome them both to our conversation today.
Happy to be here.
Happy to be here as well.
I'm so happy to be here with you all. We're like friends. You know, we hang out a lot and have been for the last several years. Anton, I'd like to start with you. You're very close with Bishop Omar Jawar and very close to this Heal America movement at its inception. Tell us a little bit about your story and a little bit about how it connects to the Heal America movement and the values and the principles that Bishop Omar was talking about, those that came from Frederick Douglass, about holding on to those principles and helping us to self-correct, helping us to create solutions to our most intractable problems.
Okay, first of all, Branden, thank you. And thank you to the Upswell Conference for allowing us to be here. Bishop Omar, my love and commitment to him for what he's done for me, he was one of the most genius minds of the 21st century. So I'd be remiss not to say that. Very smart. But let me dive right in. My name is Anton Lucky. I'm the co-chair of Heal America, president of Urban Special. I'm a social entrepreneur. I'm an author. I'm a radical pragmatist. I'm a father of two beautiful young adults who inspired me to continue this work. But before that, I was the child of a single parent mother who raised me in a project. My father was sent to prison when I was 9 months old. He did 37 years in prison. I think I fit every mathematical, statistical situation that the scientists said about communities, social, emotional, trauma, ACE, adverse childhood experience, whole 9 yards. And so I was an A on the roll student, and I'm gonna get to it. I was A on the roll student, talented and gifted student, but I lived in a community that said that survival, as on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, is the basics. And my survival came with violence. I was born in a community that was violence, but because I would like to be an A on the roll student, I had to fight every day for some reason. I didn't understand it. And so I ended up, Branden, in front of a judge, expecting to go home. But that judge said to me that you're a menace to society, and he sentenced me to prison. I remember quite vividly standing there saying, well, Judge, my neighborhood, I'm really a good kid. Like, this is my neighborhood, and you don't understand. But those words never came out of my mouth. They were just a conversation I was having in my head. So I ended up in prison. But prior to that, I started the first blood gang in Dallas because there was no bloods. But all these neighborhoods were Crips, and so quite naturally, I just said, we're going to be bloods. Didn't understand that choice. But I ended up in prison. I met a mentor 3 months into my prison sentence who approached me on a summer 1997 and said to me, little brother, he said these words, he said, little brother, all these brothers in here are following you. They do whatever you say. He said, let me just say this to you. He said, if you can lead these brothers to do wrong, you have the ability to lead them to do right. He said, you're a leader, and I never heard those words before. He began to mentor me. I started educating myself. I realized I didn't know a lot. Prison then became college, and it prepared me, and I'm skipping along to when I was released. I met a brother named Omar Jawari. He wasn't a bishop at first, wasn't a bishop. And Bishop Omar said to me, as I met him, I need you in this fight. And I said, well, brother, I'm trying to help my neighborhood. I'm trying to change the trajectory of young people that's in my neighborhood so they don't make the mistakes that I made. I want my neighborhood. I see two things. One is only inspired people can inspire people. I took that. And then the second thing he said to me, he said, look, brother, he said, there are people getting paid millions of dollars to study you while you getting shot and going to prison being you. And that dawned on me. He said, what I need you to do is not just go to your neighborhood, but I want you to go to the rival neighborhood, the Crips, and ask for forgiveness and passage. And I remember looking at him, Branden, saying, well, hey, bro, I didn't think that far into my plan. I didn't think that far. I was saying my neighborhood, that's suicide. But Omar, he convinced me the value of that rival gang, Grover Jackson, and asking him for forgiveness. I didn't know then that the principles of Heal America, redemption, justice, courage, Bishop Omar was enacting those way back then. I didn't know that those would be the foundation, those same principles for what we do in Healing America. And I go back to that. I want to pause right there.
Yeah, that's so great. Thank you, Anton. And for the audience, who is listening, Anton, as a blood, went and sought forgiveness from the Crips in Dallas, went into the enemy's den in order to seek forgiveness in order to embody these principles. Dr. Soaries, question to you is, as you reflect on this movement, as you've been leading in this movement, you're a civil rights leader, walked around Dr. King, Jesse Jackson. What are your thoughts on this notion of our session today, the paradox of the American story? What are we dealing with?
Well, first of all, let me thank you for having me on this panel. Let me thank the independent sector for their years of pulling people together from diverse backgrounds. And of course, all of the sponsors who have invested in this upswell vision. And I think the very fact that we're here, the very fact of all of these presentations, the very fact of our commitment to making America better, it suggests that the paradox, as it were, or the contradictions between the reality of the founder's language and the reality of the founder's existential context, the hypocrisy, as it were, of people who wrote that everybody was created equal while holding people in bondage. That hypocrisy, if it's the only image we have, it really cancels out optimism and hope, the type of vision that's being discussed here. It dismisses the reality of an Anton Lucky who understood his reality, but he had aspirations for something better. And so when we talk about healing America, the paradox is that on the one hand, we see people who want to dismiss the fact of the wound. And then on the other hand, we have the option to only focus on the wound without the wound ever healing. And what we've tried to do is to accomplish the task of finding people, not creating people, and really not even convincing people, but finding people who, like Anton, his mentor, Omar, and others around the country, who are in the business of not only acknowledging the wounds and the weaknesses and the hypocrisy and the injustice, but really taking communities, taking states to a level that perhaps politicians can't even achieve. And that is a level of human interaction where we, in fact, personify what Dr. King described as nonviolence. For Dr. King, nonviolence was not simply no violence, but nonviolence had 6 specific principles. And principle number 1 was that nonviolence is a way of life for courageous people. And I think today's gathering is an example of courageous people who have decided to figure out strategies, figure out alliances and coalitions to really, in fact, identify the problems, but not stop until we can execute solutions.
Yeah, that's so great. And the issues of division are not new to our society. They're not new to the world. And there are so many change makers that have come throughout history, whether it's Dr. King or Malcolm X or Medgar Evers, and the list goes on. And so many that are a part of this conference. Dr. Soaries, in your view, what do we need to do in order to experience the healing, when we say heal America, and the value of human connection and trusting one another and dignifying one another, learning how to connect across lines of difference? How do we actually get there in the climate that we're currently in right now? We're talking about a third way that is not currently present or is not the main way in which people are leaning in right now, based on the extremes that you just articulated.
I think our goals have been, in many instances, too narrow and too shallow. When you go back to Anton's story and the work that he and Omar did together, the goal was always to rise above legitimate differences. There are people who have legitimate differences of opinion, differences in background, but there is a consensus around our collective humanity. Dr. King said that fighting for justice, nonviolence, is fighting against injustice and not against people. And I think what's happened is we've narrowed our grievances down to individuals. And so we perceive that our problems are people and not principles and policies and practices that, of course, are kept alive by people. And so I think we need to elevate our discourse. We need to expand our vision, and we need to look deeply into the wounds, not so much to allow the wounds to hold us hostage. We don't want to deny the past, but we don't want to be held hostage. We don't want to be incarcerated by the past. We want to look into the future. When Anton was still in jail, he had a vision for connecting with Omar when he came out of jail. And I keep calling their names because in many ways, the Heal America movement is built on the model and the example that they set. You can argue with philosophy, but you can't argue with the empirical data that emerges from their actual experience right there in Dallas, Texas.
Yeah, and so when we're talking about a third way here, we're actually talking about an old way, aren't we? We're talking about a principled way that has actually not been far from us over the years. You know, we've seen this, and Bishop Omar said this in a video that we just saw, and even John Powell referenced this in his earlier session, which is that, you know, in our Declaration of Independence, it says that, you know, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and yet we have the issue of slavery, we have the history of slavery, civil rights, all of these things. But the values and the principles that are there are aspirational for us. We have to leverage those principles to hold ourselves accountable. And Dr. Soaries, I've heard you say this so many times, that those principles are there to help us self-correct, to help us become better, to hold us accountable to who we are, and to self-actualize into better individuals and a better country where we're treating each other with dignity and respect. Anton, question for you. And Dr. Soaries, it looks like you were about to say something, so I'll let you say something, and then I'll go to Anton. Go ahead.
No, I'm waiting for Anton.
Okay, that's, see, dignity and respect already. So Anton, question for you, because you've been so close to communities and have remained close and continue to do this as the president of Urban Specialists and a co-chair for the Heal America movement. What in your mind will it take to heal America today? It seems like it's so impossible, that the problems are just so stark, that they're so steep. Talk to us about what you think will actually get us to the place of healing today, and even tell us a little bit about your book and what that's about, and how that's really connected to that answer.
Well, Branden, I think Dr. Soaries said it so eloquently while that finding the common cause in our shared humanity, right? In my book, A Redemptive Path Forward, I talk about this term that I coined redemptive activism. And it's just what Dr. Soaries said. It's about how do we love those that disagree with us? You know, how do we under contempt and condemnation apply that it gets in the way of the end that we're trying to accomplish? That, no, we're not saying, as Doc said, that we don't want disagreement, or we don't want these kind of conversations that happen when we're addressing these kind of systems that are unjust, these systems that are structurally have some flaws in them. But we're saying, how do we address that in a way that we understand that it is hearts and it's individuals who govern systems? And so if we're not appealing to the heart, if we're not looking at the shared humanity that we all have as individuals out of America, that America's founding principles, as aspirational as they are the best principles for any civilized nation around this country. How do we engage in conversation? How do we engage in change with this redemptive idea that everyone is available to redemption, that we have to look at how do we connect together? How do we see together? How do we move change and solutions? How do we highlight those who are employing these principles around the country to raise our consciousness and our voice that ultimately change systems? And so in my book, Redemptive Path Forward, I talk about that. And I think it's exactly what Upswell is about, the upswell of individuals around the country who are tired of those two options that Dr. Soaries spoke about, that want to do this. Because lastly, we understand that when you harbor contempt and condemnation, even in trying to adjust change, it's just as you, the person that harbors.
Yeah, you know, Branden, one of my former bosses was one of Dr. King's speechwriters. And it was just emblazoned in my mind that Dr. King said, we want America to become true to what it said on paper. Now, I don't think any of us were under the illusion that Thomas Jefferson actually had a vision that matches the way we interpret his words. But my faith says that God used him to write principles which, although he could not live them himself, he left for a nation a legacy that gives us something to aspire for. And so the fact that we can even fight for justice, the fact that we can protest injustice, the fact that we can work to close the wealth gap and the income gaps, the fact that we can fight against false incarceration and police brutality and correct the criminal justice system, those are all rights that we have embedded in the founding principles, and we cherish that and will never give up on the fight.
Thank you so much, Dr. Soaries, Anton Lucky. And I think you both have said it best, finding dignity, finding a way to humanize one another. People are tired. We know that the exhausted middle, we are tired of the extremes and the extreme option. And I think it's time, and I hope that this audience today feels that they can be prophets of hope to this generation that says that we can hold America accountable to the truths that are self-evident, that all men and women are indeed created equal, and we can go forth together and heal America. If this audience is interested in learning more about Heal America, go to healamericamovement.com, take our pledge, go to standtogetherfoundation.org, learn a little bit more about the work that we're doing to heal America. Thank you, Dr. Soaries. Thank you, Anton Lucky. And G, we're right at the end. I think you're coming back to sign us off. But thank you so much for letting us be here.
I sure am.
Thank
I'm
you.
just honored to be with you. And honestly, this is not enough time to talk about the third way. We need an all day to talk about the third way because, and the feedback was incredible. I just have to mention really quickly, Anton, a lot of people are mentioning your shirt. Can you just show off your shirt to us?
Yes.
Well,
there we go.
There it is.
Heal America.
Perfect.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to Reverend Polk. Thank you to Antong Lucky. And thank you to Dr. Buster Soaries, Jr. We appreciate you. Thank you so much for your time and your gifts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
God bless you.
Appreciate. God bless you as well. Wow. Oh, my goodness. So much has happened today on the main stage. G here coming to you from Chicago. This concludes day one of Upswell. But I kind of wanted to go over some of the things that we heard today. And these are just sort of my takeaways. Maybe you've felt the same way that I have. Just this most recent conversation with Antong and Dr. Soaries and with Rev Polk. It was so interesting to hear about redemptive activism. And one of the quotes that came through to me was, "Everyone is available to redemption." And boy, is that not hopeful. That's pretty incredible to me. And who, no matter where you are in life, what path, what journey that you're on, who doesn't need redemption? And then who doesn't need to also give the grace of redemption to others, which I thought was an incredible message. Also, Antong said, only inspired people inspire people. I had never thought about it that way. And I'd only heard of hurt people, only hurt people. But this is also goes both ways. Also, with Dr. Soaries, he didn't want to deny the past. He's talking about acknowledging the wounds, talking about hypocrisies. But the way to heal that, the way to heal that is through human interaction. Once again, that ties back into the connection that we all have as human beings here on planet Earth that we heard about this morning. Also, Dr. Soaries was talking about legitimate differences and about elevating discourse and looking deeply into wounds. And boy, was this powerful to me, not to be held hostage or incarcerated by our past. I just thought that was poetry. I thought that was wisdom. I thought that was scripture. I thought it was all the things. Really incredible message there. To go back to this morning, to our two Gardner Award winners, Dr. Gail Christopher, Professor John Powell, some of the same common themes from this afternoon's main stage, tying back to this morning's. Something that stood out to me: we are all connected, even at the beginning, at birth. We are physically connected to another human being at birth. Also, that sense of belonging, the power of community and caring and kindness, which ties back to this afternoon's main stage, which was about redemptive activism and how to show love to those who may disagree with us or who may even hate us. So I think these were wonderful messages. I think it's enough for you to think on, if not for the remainder of this week and month, but for the rest of your life, because it is a journey. And I thought what was really positive was that we are always evolving. And that was a message from this morning as well, that we continue to evolve in our life's journey. So it's never too late to evolve, to learn, to grow, to love, to show grace, to share redemption. So thank you so much for joining us here on the main stage. Hope you had a really great time today, and of course, a lot of wisdom, a lot of food for thought. And I hope that you have a great evening tonight. But I did want to mention that I hoped I get to see you here tomorrow for day 2 of Upswell 2021, because we have an incredible day. We're going to have a conversation. We're going to start it off at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, a conversation between 3 amazing Black women. And as we know, Black women have saved America once again recently. This is between Angela Davis, Latasha Brown, Angela Glover Blackwell. That's going to be tomorrow at 11. But meanwhile, I hope you have a good evening. Rest up, get centered, and see you tomorrow morning for more. I'm G, signing off. Have a wonderful evening, and thank you so much.